Well, I guess we can get started, you guys. We have a good group today. My name is Risa Shimoda with the River Management Society, and I hope that you are safe and warm because it's stormy, crazy, snowing, and all sorts of things in some parts of the country. So if you've made it despite the snow, thanks an extra amount for being here today. We're here for pretty exciting, I think, kickoff to a year. Talking about what we hope to do to support water trail managers, current and aspiring water trail managers around the country. So I guess we can get started.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angie Furman. I'm the River Training Center Coordinator for RMS, and just want to welcome you to our River Management Roundtable today. Each month, we host these virtual conversations for professional river managers, water trail managers, leaders, planners, academics, really anyone who works on and with rivers. And our goal is to help facilitate an open forum so that we can support your work and we can address some important issues and help find solutions to challenges that we're all commonly facing. So thank you for coming today. Just before we get started, a couple program notes. We are recording this and we will send out the recording link to everyone who registered. We will also post this on the River Management Society YouTube channel, so you can go check it out there as well. We encourage you to be present with us today and love to see your faces if possible, and appreciate it if you're muted when you're not speaking, just to help reduce any feedback. We also have the chat box, going to be keeping an eye on that, and so feel free to use that. Also, please ask questions, engage. We're going to have some time for people to weigh in today, so would love to hear from all of you. And then just a couple reminders about sharing the space and making sure everyone has a chance to speak up. So I think we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm excited. We got Tali MacArthur today, as well as John Wenk. And I don't know if either of you want to just do like a short introduction, say hi and who you are.
Yeah, hi. I'm Tali MacArthur. I'm with the Pennsylvania Environmental Council. And I, about a month ago now, I helped sort of facilitate and lead a conversation on sort of part one of this conversation, because I'm definitely looking to learn. I coordinate Pennsylvania's statewide water trail program, but I've only been doing it for a little while, and I'm always in search of finding good tools and resources and stealing great ideas from other people doing similar work. Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of kick this thing off and see what we can learn and share, and if we can address sort of common challenges and help advance common goals, that would be really exciting. So nice to be here again this afternoon.
And John Wink with the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. I too was on the first call, and look forward to hearing what you all have to say on this call. And I'll pass it back over to Risa.
Well, I guess we're going to go ahead, and Tally, you can actually take the baton as we go through. This is feedback from those who signed up for last month's River Management Roundtable, where we asked some questions of folks who are going to be attending in terms of what you were trying to do and some of your challenges and so forth. So this is a little bit of a review, but it's a little bit of what we hopefully are talking about here.
Yeah, so before last month's roundtable, there were some questions in the registration, and then there were also, we kind of went over some of the similar questions during the hour that we spent together, and kind of started off by asking people what were some of their water trail management sort of goals, what are some of the things that they wanted to see happen more or more frequently or with more success. And it kind of overlapped a little bit with challenges, but And then we sort of tried to look at all the answers that we got. Again, we had over 154 people or something registered, and close to 100 showed up. So we had a lot of feedback, and just got kind of eyeballing it. We took people's answers and tried to group them into sort of categories. And really what we found is that in terms of sort of some water trail management goals, were to continue to improve the management, as you see here, through partnerships. So a lot of people had a lot of thoughts on partnerships, you know, whether it was trying to build capacity of local partnerships, of local partners, whether it was trying to identify somebody who could lead the effort. But partnerships typically need at least one, you know, organization who's kind of taking the lead and then brings everyone else in. And a lot of people had questions about, you know, lacking an easily identifiable sort of main leader in the partnerships. And then it was, well, how do we bring liveries and outfitters in, and what role should they play? So really kind of evaluating this idea that, you know, we work with the understanding that partnerships can be really successful when they work well, but, you know, what's the special sauce there to really get them to advance water trail goals together. And then we had a lot of feedback that was linked to, you know, water recreation. I guess it could stand on its own, but again, it's much more powerful and much more meaningful to more people if it can be combined with, you know, conservation and recognizing that we're not the only ones using the waterway, right? So there's habitat needs there. And stewardship, you know, waterway recreation can't happen on, you know, in a bubble. It can't help without people pitching in. And so how do we get people to sort of move along that trajectory from really enjoying recreating on our rivers to recognizing that they need to take a stewardship role to protect those recreational goals? What is our waterway recreation going to look like as we move into, you know, this time of more and more climate change? What role does recreation play in sort of resilience and health and well-being? And then there was definitely a lot of comments about managing multiple uses, right? So how do we link, how do we advance waterway recreation while also dealing with those that want to use waterways for hunting and fishing and other activities? And then third, a really kind of, and this is something I kind of struggled with, so definitely got on here, but, you know, really prioritizing how it is we're going to designate new water trails. How do we define that process so that it makes sense and it's fair and it's equitable? And then how do we maintain, you know, that designation, that the robustness of that designation? And then establishing, you know, one thing that came up was what are the benefits of water trail designation for users, for trail managers, and for other stakeholders? I guess next slide. Rita got to put these together, but I think these were just some examples of some of our water trails. Yeah. So, and then we asked folks what they saw was their biggest challenges, and once again tried to put these into themes. There could be some overlap among these themes, and maybe you would have put the bullets there under a different theme, but this is just how they came together. So as with any time you're trying to do anything, funding is always a challenge. But it's not all that helpful to just kind of say, oh, it would be great if we had more money, right? So we kind of dug a little deeper and like, what do we mean by funding? And again, kind of this idea of who's willing to really invest to make this thing happen, identifying federal, you know, state government funds, federal funds, private funding, pay to use type funding, like what do those all look like? You know, maybe you have a really good relationship with a funder that's, you know, funding the recreation side of things, but you know, you don't have anyone that's really investing in your conservation practices, or maybe you have someone that is investing in launches and they really want to see the infrastructure built and they're really excited about that, but who's funding? We had a question come up just yesterday. Who's funding safety? Who's funding emergency access and rescues and things like that, and then the materials that you need for that thing. Who's funding education and capacity building? So, and then is there any way to kind of compensate your stewards for the work that they're doing, or their managers? So that all came under funding. A lot of conversation about people trying to understand the difference between ADA and universal access. So that was sort of an emerging lead. And hold on, all your pretty faces are blocking my view here. Again, program coordination and leadership. So getting back to the partnerships, and a big one I think that came up for some folks is, again, the benefits of designation. So you'll see how how the program goals and the challenges overlap, but really kind of understanding, what does it mean? Okay, so I'm a designated water trail, capital W, capital T. How's that different than, well, I'm just a waterway you can paddle on. And then a lot of questions about promotion and branding, and sort of that idea of, getting just enough use of your waterways in a fair and equitable way, but ensuring, also what might you do over overuse, and, how does promotion work in that situation? And then the next slide, you can go ahead and advance it, Angie. And so the next thing we talked about is like, what would be helpful to this community to try to meet those challenges and advance those goals. So we asked a question about that. It came under next steps, or what would be helpful to you. And I would say, and this is something we were kind of talking about before that we kind of officially kicked off here at 3:30, but Eastern time. But like, what shared resources, what might that look like? So we don't want to all be reinventing the wheels. So what would a toolbox of resources look like? Are maps helpful? Maybe sample memorandums of understanding or agreement between the various partners. I've had a lot of interest here in Pennsylvania in developing management plans. A lot of our trails have been in place for a while. But people are recognizing that needs are changing, funding is changing, use is changing. So how do we manage now? How do we manage these trails now? Organizations that are still looking to maybe develop new water trails. What do feasibility studies, what do they look like? What should they include? How much do they cost? What kind of consultants do them? And then we're facing some things with signage design templates, logo use guidelines, things like that, where all those came up as opportunities to maybe, share those in some way with one another. And then we talked about, the last month we had 3 water trail managers, myself and Andrea from Georgia and John from Iowa, talk about our programs. And we had a lot of feedback that's like, can we have presentations for maybe 3 more water trail leaders to talk about their programs, just so that we can learn and understand how those work? So would a presentation be helpful? We also talked about updating an existing spreadsheet that has tons of columns and rows on all the different programs. Is that a helpful tool? That's the database directory. So if we updated that, how could that best be used? Even if we did hire an intern or a student, we want to make sure that that directory or that database is going to be useful for folks, and not just have an Excel spreadsheet that sits on people's computers but isn't useful. How can we really make such a directory or database useful? Next slide, I guess. So that was the recap. I didn't want to take too long sort of talking about what we, hopefully some of you did participate last month, but still thought it would be helpful, especially after the haze of the holidays, to kind of recap sort of what we talked about. But really what we are wanting to think about moving forward is sort of like, now what? So what, and here I'll let kind of Risa or John kind of jump in and also share kind of what you were thinking, but how do we take these next steps? So how do we help advance the goals, that people talked about? How do we help address the challenges? How can we really make some of those next steps that people had given us feedback that they wanted that? This isn't exactly in the purview of either, my job description or maybe anybody as, who's already at capacity with a lot of things. And we know that this will benefit a lot of people, but in order for it to benefit a lot of people, at least some people have to sort of step into a role of leading this charge. And so we were kind of, wanted to get some feedback, especially for people that may have signed up last month and came back and are really kind of invested in this. Who is willing to work together to see some of this through? What might that group look like? Do we call it a community of practice? Is it a listserv? Is it an offshoot of the roundtables on a topical basis? Where might this group be focused, or where, be hosted? Where would we meet? Would it be virtual? Would it be in person? Would it be regional? Would it be at conferences? And then from there stems sort of when, like how often would this group come together? Lisa, did you have anything more on that, or did we want to share some of the opportunity to give feedback on the Jamboard yet, or?
Yeah, I think so. This is, thanks Tally, because you recapped the whole last month. You did a great job. And Angie's just put in the chat a link to a Jamboard, which addresses these questions. Like, okay, we think there's a lot of people who are working on water trails, have a water trail they want to develop or improve or create. And there is no organization really that's delivering this stuff now. It's completely in RMS's mission. We'd like to, but we can't kind of make up what we think, hundreds of people want until we sort of know that. And then when we think we know what can be done, figure out how we're going to do that. And we also can't do that ourselves because we aren't you. So we don't know what you really need. We can help facilitate it and help promote and that kind of thing. So if you want to jump to the Jamboard, this is where your input is going to be really important. And John, I just realized on the cover slide we spelled your name wrong. Sorry about that. I don't even know if you noticed. I was just looking at, we spelled it John Wench. That's terrible.
That's okay. That happens a lot actually, and I'm not a wench, but I get called.
You don't look like it. Horrifying. So, after you've heard that, you guys are part of your own organization, leaders in your own either NGO or agency. You're part of collaboratives. You are partners. You meet with groups one-on-one in listservs, in lunch tables, and whatever. What do you think over the next, like, who knows how long it will go, but for the next couple of years, say, what would be a suggested framework for us, anybody who's here, regardless of what your job is, let's count everybody who's here, how to meet, communicate, collaborate, share in a way that is sort of structured from your experiences doing whatever you do.
Yeah, and as a reminder, probably most people are familiar with Jamboard, but I think what most people do is click on the little post-it note. So the fourth icon down brings up a little post-it note, sticky note, thank you. And then you can type and post, you can move that sticky note around. But yeah, I guess we are just looking for your thoughts on what it might look like. What is another way to meet to sort of address some of these issues sort of outside of these roundtables? And Rita, I don't know, we're not a gigantic group here. I didn't know if you also kind of wanted people to unmute or raise hands.
Sure.
I'm not sure if you're able to do that, but not everyone's great at sort of listening, thinking, and typing all at the same time. But if anyone wants to unmute themselves.
I think
perhaps.
that when folks joined, they were muted, but if you want to raise your hand, I can ask somebody to unmute them. You can unmute yourself, I think. Sorry.
And I guess some other thoughts would be too, like, in terms of communication. So, would like an online community work? I mean, meaning like I'm seeing things like listserv and a Google group. If you're thinking about also, meetups, what might those look like? I was telling Risa that I've participated in this group that does life hacks over lunch, which is basically like a pitching a challenge, and then the gang who is available tries to give sort of feedback and solutions. So everyone's learning at the same time, but it's kind of on a topical kind of group.
Yeah, I love that suggestion. How often do you think does that group meet, Sally?
I think that's about once a month for 6 months out of the year. So they give people a break over the holidays and over the summer, but I think it's about 6 times a year.
Yeah, I belong to a Maryland nonprofits group, and the Maryland nonprofits, and they do coffee on Friday mornings. It's easy to do it at an early time because everybody's in the same time zone, which would not be the case here, but it's once a month also. And they always have a topic. You can talk about anything, but they have a starter topic. So that could be something too.
I was just thinking, one of the challenges I think is, like each state is a little different in how, water fields are just administered differently, perhaps, and there's also challenges with how the law defines, whether there's public or private, whether the riverbed is public or private. So there are a number of differences, but probably sticking back to the administrative side of it, there's probably, I just wonder if there's a value in identifying the different types or models of water trails that exist currently. Like, is it a state-run organization, or a state-run program rather, like in Iowa, where, or is it a nonprofit that's driving the show? And maybe it's just one water trail in a state that's looking for information. People are coming at it from different approaches, and like what might solve one problem in one state might not work in another state, or just depending on how it's managed or whatnot. So just
Good.
throwing
These are great suggestions.
I love that idea.
Thanks. I think we have some good answers to this one, and we might find that some of the suggestions here, could be repeated on future slides. I know it's hard to tell because you guys don't know what the next slides are going to be, unless you've clicked ahead on your Jamboard. But yeah, these I think are some good ideas. I think some of them are something that RMS kind of does. So maybe there's like a breakout or a side group or something that really focuses on water trail program issues and meets like that. So kind of some of the existing resources that RMS has already kind of has, but focus them a little bit for this particular community of practice.
The main one that talks about a framework is, there are online systems like LinkedIn and Google groups, but while having a water trail board. So that's a collaborative of some sort that's X number of people for a certain period of time. Those are the folks who define what they're going to do for the month or the year or the every other month or whatever. Yeah, let's go ahead to the next one. We'll see some duplication. Yeah, so who's in charge? Who gets the group together?
And also, I think another thing here is sort of, should there be any kind of, I love to say it, but like a kind of a responsibilities of the group participants also, right? If you're Angie was kind of telling us about a group that she's involved in, and if you suggest an idea, you're also kind of expected to facilitate the conversation on that. Again, you don't have to be the expert, but should there be sort of any kind of expectations? On the previous slide, somebody wrote, for example, a newsletter. So would there be kind of an expectation that at least once a year, a member of if you're a member of this community of practice, is there kind of an expectation that you either write an article or share an idea or something like that? So kind of who's cultivating, who's leading? Are there any sort of roles and expectations of participants?
I wonder if our audience or everyone here could type in the chat and identify what your role is, and maybe your role is a user, or a recreationalist, or maybe your role is a program coordinator, or maybe your role is a facilitator or whatever. It'd be interesting to know what each of your roles are in your local community. But I think Tally and I are state-run programs. Is that right, Tally? I mean, you're with a nonprofit, right? But you're working on behalf of the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So Pennsylvania Environmental Council is a nonprofit, but we are supported by a state agency and its funding sources for the most part. And our partnership in our program are 2 state agencies and the National Park Service. Yep.
Cool.
Oh, good. It's great. So for those whose jobs currently are facilitative in nature, you understand that that's an important part of this. It's great. It's great to have some ideas, but then there needs to be, at least some shared activity to do it, offer it, make it happen, kind of.
I guess also on this slide, if you if there is something that I know maybe Risa asked, that this was a question in the registration, and we'll kind of review those responses. But and again, I didn't look ahead at all the slides here on the Jamboard, but if there's at some point on any of your sticky notes, sort of like if you wanted to write down where your expertise might lie, or a role that you would be willing to take, that also just might be helpful for us to understand sort of what are some of the other kind of where else can we tap into for ideas for some leadership. So if there's anything that you would be willing to facilitate or lead or do, if there's something that you have a desire to kind of do to advance kind of these shared goals for everyone, that would be helpful too.
Just again, if you want to go to, I'm just going to put the Jamboard address in the chat again, just in case you haven't gotten there.
I like that idea of, I wonder if RTCA has an opportunity to kind of help launch, put a little bit more of a framework around this idea.
There's at least one RTCA person here. I saw Andrew. If there's anyone, if you could just comment whether or not this falls into your bailiwick, because it's sort of different because it's not one district, sort of across different districts.
Speaking as an RTCA person, I know there are a few others on the call. I'm not sure that we have the capacity to do something on a national scale right now. We're even in the midst of not having anybody to lead the National Water Trail program in our program. but we do a lot of facilitation of local projects and even regional, statewide, and national projects. I'm just trying to think of who it would be within our group that would take the lead on something like that. I mean, we did have Rivers and Watersheds Community of Practice within, we still do, within RTCA, but that's an internal group. So I'm not really sure how we would go about doing that or who would do it.
Thanks, Andrea. This is Lelia, and I'm the one who wrote that, so I'll respond. It's interesting. The idea of doing something nationally is maybe challenging, and you have to get leadership approval. But I'm just thinking, could we work with RMS, get a fellow for a year who would sort of, this would be in their bailiwick to help launch it, you know, and groom those leaders. Tully's idea of, you know, having other people step up, so really try to hold those people's hands. It's an idea that could be investigated, I guess.
Thanks, Lily. You know, I think because this is new and for everyone who's here today, if anyone were to work on it, it would be hard to focus on that because we all do 7 other things, right? So to have someone focus on it for a period of time to help establish a framework, then that person could delegate to how many ever districts you have. You know, you have 10 districts or whatever, or we established that this, someone said there was a water trail board or something on the last slide. It's 5 people, or it's 1 person from every 10 states, you know, whatever it is. And they meet twice a year, you know, but to get that kind of down, and not like starting an NGO, we don't need bylaws necessarily, but a framework and how it could be encouraged, promoted, and then ultimately sustained. You know, so every 2 years we take a look. Is this working? Yes. If it's not, let's pitch it and, you know, shake hands and go away. Or, oh yeah, it's pretty good, but we should, you know, someone who can help us put that, because even as much as I would love to do, we don't do water trails. We don't have the cards in our deck to be able to be creative as any of you would. But this also isn't something that, you know, any of us can, you know, focus on full time. And it wouldn't be as good, even if one of us decided to, it just wouldn't be as good as if someone was coordinating an effort, asking Tally for input, asking John for input, and so forth on an idea. So it would be pretty awesome, Lily, to get us started. And I think a fellow would, because if it was that's sort of internal to Park Service, as opposed to asking the National Park Foundation for a grant, because that's different, you know. I don't know. It would be, I think, consistent with RTCA's mission, but it would help with the borderless nature that has to be, you know, if it's a national initiative.
Right. This is Lelia again. I'm thinking along those same lines. And of course, going back in history, that we started this 30 years ago, and in fits and starts, and you know, some not pretty history, it fell apart. But you know, somebody wrote, could we have an active advocate and a lobbyist? There's no reason that some group, you know, not the federal government, but somebody else could take those reins, and it could be part of this group's mission. But I do agree with Risa. I don't think we need to start a whole new nonprofit.
We want to go to the next slide, the next
Yeah,
Jamboard, and
okay.
see kind of what we
Yeah.
continue to
Yeah.
evolve
thanks,
the
Tally.
proposition.
Where meaning geographically or virtually, some of the previous notes address this. LinkedIn group, Google group,
Mhm.
periodic meeting. RMS could certainly initiate it. You know, we have virtual tools, but again, we would need a collaboration to know what to post. How often, where?
Other than, so I'm relatively new still. I mean, other than the RMS symposium, are there other places where, you know, the members of this community kind of meet up, or, you know, would there be an opportunity to have, you know, a happy hour or gathering somewhere else where the group meets? Or I'm just trying to think if there's other, I mean, virtual spaces work really well in a lot of ways, but then there, you know, is there opportunities to pursue you know, in-person meetups? Yeah, I think this
Well, this is
Probably
Lilia
time.
again. This, and Risa, you can chime in. In my 30 years, just to age myself, there have been two particular groups who have tried to add it on to their own conferences, one being RMS and the other being American Trails. And especially American Trails, it's a little bit of a square peg in a round hole. We would get some people, but it was a subset definitely of the bigger trails community. And at the RMS symposiums, we definitely tried some things, haven't we, Risa? Again, with mixed success.
Right. It was sort of not by accident, but not a focus of it. Although, well, I want to come back to that Lily a second. Each chapter is asked to do 2 trips per year, 2 river trips per year that are programmatically themed. So it's not that they're not allowed to be fun, but they're not just, you know, let's go on a river. Those are tools that can happen. We have had a few, not many, like lunchtime meetings that can serve a community of, you know, say water trail managers when you're in pretty close proximity. Years ago, there was a luncheon about hydro or something in Boston. Well, only so many people can get to Boston for lunch. So that's a little bit limited, but it's not with that. And if you ask the chapter person, you know, that kind of thing can happen. But one thing that I think we did in 2015, there was a National Water Trails Conference. Park
Right.
Service largely supported it. Some of the people here attended, and it was in Lansing, here on River Watershed Council. I think that's their name, hosted it. And all the current and aspiring water trails organizations attended. So there were like not 180 people, you know, a good number. It was fantastic. And we have enthusiastically suggested adding water trails as a track to our symposium, which will be the end of next May 2025. So that could be something, but that's not an every year thing. You know, that's a big initiative. But locally, you have access to anyone else in your area. You can look them up. You can ask the chapter to call a meeting. So there's nothing prohibiting a get together for sure. It just requires somebody's creativity saying, hey, can we do this?
Andrea White has her hand up. Andrea.
Yeah.
Hey guys, down here in Georgia, there's a project on the Chattahoochee for Chattahoochee Riverlands, which is being managed by the Trust for Public Lands, which is national. But the project is obviously a Georgia project. Since the pandemic, they have taken over a kind of an every 2-year conference that they do on economic development around trails in general. Be they water trails, bike trails, hiking trails, etc. And my understanding is that they are in the process of organizing a 2024 conference that would be somewhere in Georgia. I'm not in on the details of those logistics, but that is in development for this year, I think probably for the fall. I did speak to some of the head honchos of that and tell them about the progress this group was making and sort of coalescing the folks in this topic area. And they said if we would like for them to, they would be open to having a track on water trails at their conference. They certainly were not imposing upon anything we would like to do elsewhere, but they offered that up if that was something that was appealing to us.
There is I mean, I'll add on to that, Andrea. There is a trails, just general trails groups, and I know Iowa is part of a trails district, and we were attending those for a while, but and this is just, you know, my experience. I can't vouch for any others, but water trails, just, you know, not intentionally, it wasn't intentional, but it's a hard fit. It's a square round, yeah, square peg and round hole type thing. It doesn't have to be, but that's what it came down to, because there's just some extreme differences. That yes, they're all trails, but like one's water, one's bike, and you know, it was hard. Yeah, hard to fit into that.
I mean, I'm here. These are all my constituents. I'm gonna be there anyway, right?
Yeah.
The
Definitely
from
not
a
saying
southeastern
idea.
perspective, we have a lot of the, you know, the folks that are interested in municipal economic development around trails would be there anyway.
Yeah.
Which is a good constituency to be able to interact with. So
Well,
I mostly just offer this up. I mean, I can go back to them and say, hey, let me do one session, or we could go back to them and say, let us have a whole track. I mean, we have options.
And Andrea, it's not a bad idea, and it never is. Anytime you're trying to, you know, bring people together, I just wanted to share, you know, what my
Sure.
experience has been, and yeah.
Yeah, but Teresa's point, putting together the kind of in-person thing we're talking about is a big lift. And it's generally not an every year thing, not if we want it to continue, because you burn out the people that do it. So being able to find, you know, the group that does it in odd years and the group that does it in even years is not a terrible notion.
Well, you know, for the symposium, just because we're doing that, we started working on hours for next year. Last year, we started working on it. You know, so we work on it for 2 years, and then you know, it's a heavy lift, but there's a ton of people working on it. You know, there's the system for calling for the program. We could easily do 2 days and like a field trip thing on water trails, easy. Because we're doing it already. We're already doing that amount of time. It would be another room, you know, with focus programming. So that's definitely an option, but that's not the same as getting together with Pennsylvania, Maryland, West Virginia, New York State, Delaware for you, Tally. You know, it's not the same as getting together with those folks who have some of the same issues that are irrelevant in Colorado. So it's 2 different kind of things, maybe. And there's a third is just the virtual part, right? So maybe we have 3 components to Water Trails Community. One is what you can put together based on who is in your area. One is national opportunities that come along once in a while, but you know, you might make lifelong connections. And one is virtual of one sort or another at different frequencies. You know, one thing that we found with that Water Trails Conference in Lansing, which I would say the attendees found it really successful, is that many people said, I want to go, this would be great, this is awesome, we did the program, and no one could pay for it. Park Service had to pretty much pay for all the attendees, or most of them, heavily subsidized attendance, because there were not NGOs who were not agency people or didn't have in their budget. So not that it can't happen again, but that was stressful for the Park Service. They came through with flying colors, but they didn't realize that. When people say, I want to go. And then I can't go because I can't afford it.
I think we have a couple other slides that we might be able to get a little bit more feedback from. Maybe the questions will feel more, I think we've probably talked a little bit about this one.
Yeah, I think so.
So this one, the next one is one that I kind of, again, because there just seemed to be so much interest in it, I don't want to say that we would, you know, I still think we have to put a bit of a framework around what this community practice is going to look like. But I feel like this has come up like over and over again. And it's why I asked Risa to kind of create a slide. And I think we definitely have some ideas for this. But I feel like one of the questions I'm constantly asked, like, or an email that I'm constantly getting is, do you have a template for, or is there an example of blank that I could just use to not have to reinvent the wheel? Or, you know, I remember talking to so-and-so and they were working on this, but I never saw the final product. You know, I guess my question for this one is, if we were to create, if one of the things that we could come together and create that wouldn't necessarily require travel or another meeting or something else on your calendar, but would be a tool, a resource that you would use, and that you could go to, what would you want in it? What would you want to see? And I feel like at this point we can kind of say anything. I think later we could evaluate whether that makes sense, like from a legal perspective, or it's too specific, or yeah, I could provide this, but I'd have to redact 3/5 of it, so it wouldn't really be helpful, you know. But I guess, you know, what are some things that would work? For example, just lately I've been asked for examples of water trail management plan. So Pennsylvania has a lot of water trails that were sort of grandfathered into our system before we really thought about, like, either some of them even got, you know, selected they didn't even have a feasibility study that just agreed to create a trail. And so water trail management plans have come up, landowner agreements. So like templates, for either a municipal or private landowner who's agreeing to have a project on their land, conservation easement template language for when you maybe have to access somebody's property for a portage. I'm just kind of spewing things out while we say this, but yeah, MOUs with water trail managers, MOUs with municipal partners, you know, just some things that would be helpful that you could grab and not feel like you're reinventing the wheel all the time. I could add this to mine, but we just literally launched a new logo. And again, we're doing all kinds of carts before horses here, but we launched the logo before we actually finalized any use guidelines. So if anybody had like template logo use guidelines, you know, I'd love to see something like that. So anything you can think of that you would like to, and then, you know, again, if there's another little post-it note that you could, if you see one up there that you think you have, or could share, you know, maybe that's something to give some feedback on too. But yeah, signage design guidelines. Yeah. I'd love to know how people are using different, you know, promotional opportunities. Has been researching a lot of these sort of like passports that you might have seen that a lot of like local tourism boards put out. So you get a passport and you get a stamp if you visited X number of farmers markets or breweries or consignment stores, or, you know, whatever it might be. So how are people, you know, what are some tried and true promotional?
As far as the toolbox goes, if we do end up with a fellow from National Park Services, you know, developing some kind of a folder system, hierarchy of folders that people can share information so it's organized well. I mean, that could be one of the roles of that that person. I see this as a huge need. I mean, I can think of a lot of things that people have posted that I would like to see how other people are doing it, you know, and compare it with what we're doing. And I think there's all kinds of, that opens the floodgates, right? Of here's what we're doing here, and being able to just, you know, go down a hierarchy of a folder and click the one that you're interested in and seeing examples. That would be huge, I think, for people that's working on them.
I'd say for sure there have been many wheels reinvented many times in many places.
Yeah.
You know, without this, because how do you know?
Right.
I love telling about the I don't know if it was a water trail, but definitely a water access point in Mystic, Connecticut, where someone said, we're making a welcome sign in 26 languages. We think we don't need quite that many. So, you know, they would probably benefit from somebody else saying, well, you only really need 3 or 10 or whatever.
Well, and for people who have gone through this and made a lot of mistakes early on, you know, if we can save people from making those same mistakes, and because a lot of the things that happen, we just couldn't foresee happening until they happened. I mean, that's kind of the way you learn, I guess. But gosh, if we can save some people headaches, you know, all the better.
If you're on the Jamboard yourself, feel free to continue to post. It might want to go on. To the last one. Let's see. What's the last one? Yeah. You know, so I think what would be really helpful for us is who the top of this page said who's in. If there's someone, if you would like to help, I think either you can post, you know, a note in the chat, and know that there needs to be a group, whether it's, you know, 3 or 7, that helps us create this. Even if we do have a fellow, that the fellow won't be here for a while. In the, you know, ideal. Lelia, we're already running with your fellow. That doesn't exist yet, but still would need guidance from a small group of people who have a sense of where the questions or statements on the post-it notes came from. You guys who do this, you know, and know what your needs are. And then also the, you know, when and where do we start and how often, that kind of stuff. It would be a guess, and it might be 50% wrong, but we have to start somewhere. And so what's exciting is that this is new, and what we hope it will be around for a while, and so that we would build in some kind of, you know, like I heard last week a lot when New Year's came, people talking about their resolutions, and many people were advising don't take big chunks, take little chunks, make your goals reasonable, and, you know, so that your likelihood of achieving them is great. So if folks would like to help, please let us know, and we're going to ask at least Tally and John, to the extent that he can give us some time to help form this little baby that we're creating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we
I
have,
definitely
I
agree.
just want to say, we have like a penciled in checklist, a check-in September. Let's see how we're doing. You know, what have we done by, you know, number of months from now? And maybe that's a reality that we can have. It's like, okay, we really need to be continuing this discussion and setting something up and trying it. Callie, did I jump on you?
Yeah, no, not at all. No, I was just thinking, no, I was going to ask, you know, one of the questions that I posted on one of the safety notes is kind of like, because I do feel like we still had some good feedback on sort of topics that I think people were interested in. And I guess I was just kind of curious, you know, as we continue to build to kind of a framework that might take a little bit more time and a little bit more effort and hiring and, you know, whatever it might be, you know, are there definite like topics that this group specifically, you know, really feels that they'd like to hear about, you know, while that other work is taking place. So again, you know, like universal design was something that we had heard a bunch of people kind of chime in on. So I just want to try to avoid losing momentum as we kind of talk about the more difficult, like creating this community and where it's going to go from here. You know, are there some things that we could continue to bring this interested group together on a topic that has been identified? And I guess I was just wondering if that's, you know, something that we could do sooner rather than later.
I'll throw this out there. I mean, I'd be willing to handle that topic and just let people know what we've been doing in Iowa on universal design. And we do have right now on contract a universal design expert. She's not really familiar. She's not a paddler. necessarily. She has been in a boat and she has paddled, but you know, universal design is not just, you know, doesn't just cover one piece. You know, it's supposed to be applied in multiple situations. So I'd be happy to do that next month.
Do you want to try setting up a Google group and discuss that, or and see if that works, or if it's insufficient? No, we got to get together in the Zoom. You know, maybe that would be. Is there anyone who wouldn't be able to participate in a Google group? You're familiar with, because for agency folks, I know that sometimes that might not work, but I sort of get the sense. And then Jack, I'm going to let you go because we're getting to the bottom of the hour.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry, I'm in the car. I'm just listening in, and just a couple of thoughts I wanted to offer before we wrapped up, just because I hadn't seen all the discussions from the Jam board and whatnot. But I would just say, you know, as a practitioner in the space, like having a topic-specific listserv like would be really helpful. Like I think a lot of us use the RMS listserv in general for questions, and it's great, but sometimes like it gets lost in bigger topics. So like a paddle trail practitioner specific listserv, like, you know, with these folks could be really nice just for like specific questions like we've talked about. And then in terms of like a toolbox, there was mention of like some sort of like folder system or Google Drive system. And I think like even if we don't have someone to like go through and populate all that initially, I think it could be helpful to like create the framework for that. And even just having people within the listserv populate examples from their own work could be really nice. Like I use John's Iowa accessible stuff quite a bit in my job, and like I could see that going in there, but I might have some good mapping stuff to offer. And I think like a self-populated version could be a good start before bringing on some additional capacity. So that's all. Thanks.
Before we get to the bottom of the hour and folks might have to go, here's a survey. We hope that we could take a second to fill out. It's super short. And Angie, you want to go to just those couple final slides? So thank you, you guys, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for these ideas. I mean, I think there's definitely interest. I think we just have to put a little bit more of a frame around it and see where it goes. But yeah, thanks everyone for feedback.
Got a couple of events coming up. Andrew, you want to go ahead? You're muted. Oh, she can't unmute. Oh no. So we have a Wild Scenic River series coming up. The next couple of months we'll have actually a river management roundtable. We're going to talk about the rights of rivers, the rights of nature thing. So you'll see an announcement with that soon. So I think maybe the best thing to do, I'll work with Tally, John, our team to kind of summarize what we've seen on these post-it notes, what we think, and then you know, try this Google group. We'll see if that can work. You know, everybody who's here, those who have signed up for this, maybe just do a couple of test things before we get into heavy lifting topics, and then see if that's a baby step. And Lilia, we're gonna we'll continue to talk to you, maybe Andrea too, about the prospect of NPS helping out.
Sounds good. And I like your picture of our RMS Allagash trip there.
Yeah, there you go. That's right, you're in there.
So is Jack, but he can't see himself.
So's Jack, he can't see himself, yeah.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a good rest of your day.